Government agencies and corporate climate messengers told you to change your light bulbs, replace your appliances, shut off your AC, and stop being selfish. At the exact same time, you were told to conserve electricity. Microsoft acquired 3 Mile Island, a long dormant nuclear site. Nuclear turned out to be the climate solution after all, just not for the public. Google backed the construction of multiple nuclear reactor sites.
And Google is the latest tech giant to press the nuclear button. It signed a deal to build 7 small nuclear reactors to power its AI data centers. The first is scheduled to go online this decade, with the rest following through 2035.
Amazon attempted to take almost a full city's worth of electricity from the public grid to power a single corporate campus until federal authorities intervened. The company that tracks your toothpaste order now gets Defense Act protection.
We need to do the AI, all of this new technology that's coming online. We need more than double the energy, the electricity that we currently have. You take all of the electricity in the country right now for houses, for buildings, for everything. We need to more than double it to be number one.
People keep nodding along like lemmings, sleepwalking through the contradiction, accepting blame without resistance. Despite these enormous corporate expansions, the narrative still insists your personal energy choices are causing the crisis. Your dishwasher somehow became the villain in the national energy story. But this isn't a story about appliances. This is the point of the video. It's about energy control, who quietly seized it, who gets it first, and who gets rationed. If you want to understand how big tech took over the grid, buried public access, and locked in the future, you're in the right place. Big tech owns the power now, literally, and the public got left with instructions to conserve. You switched to LEDs. They signed a co-location deal. Guess who's still losing power? The real crisis has nothing to do with dishwashers or household conservation. What's happening instead is that major technology corporations like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon have quietly secured direct control of critical American energy sources, including nuclear reactors and key sections of the power grid.
We need to increase power by about 165% by 2030, according to Goldman Sachs. But yeah, you think about Microsoft, Google, Meta, really big tech companies, really interested in AI. Where are they putting their money? They're putting it in nuclear, wind, solar, and batteries. And they're putting hundreds of billions of dollars collectively.
This matters because control over energy is control over your life, your community, and your freedom. Once these companies fully dictate who receives power first, it won't be families, hospitals, or small businesses. It will be their data centers and artificial intelligence servers. Americans who still think they're saving the planet by conserving energy are actually being conditioned to live with less permanently. Every new project starts by asking what big tech already took. The leftovers go to the people. The same companies that warned of climate strain now draw more electricity than entire cities. Ironically, humans have become the batteries, quietly drained to feed an empire of technological domination and surveillance. The loudest voices against communism now embrace tech-driven collectivism, where your sacrifice quietly fuels corporate ambitions. 2 years ago, the 5-year electricity forecast stood at 23 gigawatts. That projection surged to 128. The figure represents a 456% spike in expected demand. Growth in residential neighborhoods played no role. None of these numbers are estimates or guesses. They come directly from public contracts and documented energy flows. Power doesn't flow downhill anymore. It flows upstream into machines you don't own and can't unplug. Most people figure that when electricity demand spikes, something real must be growing. They picture factories starting up, neighborhoods expanding, or maybe even new industries coming back. That kind of growth never caused the current surge. The spike came from buildings full of machines, server warehouses, cloud storage hubs, and artificial intelligence campuses that handle massive amounts of digital information. These places do not make products or hire crowds of workers. Their entire purpose is to move, sort, and learn from data. That includes tools like ChatGPT, which I am using to write this, and 11 Labs, which I am using to speak it. Even though these systems feel light and virtual, they depend on enormous banks of industrial computers that run constantly. They sort emails, track locations, process voice files, and retrain themselves using behavior data. Most people picture artificial intelligence as something soft and futuristic, but the reality looks more like a warehouse running hot all day and night. They told you to use fans while their artificial intelligence runs like an industrial furnace. Those buildings now receive priority when it comes to electricity. That kind of priority means their power needs are locked in ahead of time, and the rest of the grid has to adjust around them. PJM Interconnection, which manages the grid for over 65 million people across 13 states, holds an auction each year to reserve future electricity. This auction is called the Base Residual Auction, and it determines how much power gets set aside for different buyers 3 years in advance. A group called Monitoring Analytics oversees that process, and in their most recent report, they said the entire strain on the system comes from one source. They explained that if data centers had not been added, electricity supply would still be stable and long-term prices would stay within normal range. They traced nearly every stress point on the grid to growing electricity demand from server campuses and artificial intelligence systems. You get conservation tips. They get 30-year exclusive access to a nuclear reactor. That means when utilities build their future plans, they start by calculating how much electricity Amazon, Google, and Microsoft will need. The rest gets divided afterward. The grid was built for homes, towns, and hospitals. Now it routes energy to quarterly earnings reports. These energy-hungry buildings often get approved one by one through small local boards. Sometimes it's just a few county officials sitting in a town hall meeting, signing off on projects that will pull more electricity than the entire community around them. Utility companies once focused on schools, homes, and growing towns. Those priorities changed. For most of my life, I assumed local boards and public agencies were taking care of the grid. I did not know who they were, but I believed they existed. I thought they would act in the public interest. The ignorant mindset I'm still awakening from is what we refer to as the blue pill.
In today's news, the death count is escalating. You should be scared.
Yes, I'm very scared.
That belief created a blind spot. Over time, that blind spot allowed corporate systems to take the lead. Energy infrastructure now grows to match the needs of machines, and communities adapt to whatever power is left over. Families wait, small towns fall behind. The system follows the logic of a medic on the battlefield, sending power toward whatever has already been marked as critical. Amazon didn't just kill small business, it took your town's grid space to keep Prime running on time, and this is just the beginning. Across the country, hundreds of new server campuses are already being planned, each one locking in more energy before the public ever sees the leftovers. In Virginia, server facilities already consume more electricity than the city of Chicago. In Loudoun County, one co-location deal gave a cluster of server buildings first priority access through the year 2045. That kind of deal is hard to undo. In these co-location setups, a company builds its data center right next to a power plant or substation, close enough to plug straight into the energy source without going through the public grid. Co-location isn't innovation. It's cheating with permits. Most people think of the grid as just power lines, but what these private companies are allowed to bypass is more than that. The grid is the entire delivery system. Generation plants, high voltage transmission lines, switching stations, neighborhood substations, and local distribution lines. It's built to move electricity across long distances, balance it across regions, and keep the whole system stable when demand shifts or outages happen. When electricity stays inside that network, it can be shared, rerouted, or paused if there's an emergency. Co-location cuts around all of that. the company installs a dedicated line that pulls energy directly into its facility. That power doesn't pass through shared infrastructure. It doesn't get taxed, reprioritized, or redirected. In some cases, these facilities don't even show up as flexible users on the grid. They get treated as critical infrastructure and locked into guaranteed delivery. Co-location is what you do when stealing power legally becomes easier than sharing it. These companies don't just get power first. They get it under terms the public can't reach. They skip the line by skipping the system. I obviously use these systems too. I don't want my artificial intelligence tools going dark. I don't want my email crashing or my backups failing. But if these tools can't exist without cutting the public out of the power system, then the structure needs to change. I won't trade electricity for silence. I won't accept a future where the same people who control the energy also control what I'm allowed to say, who I'm allowed to criticize.
Crazy, bipolar, anti-Semite, and I'm still the king.
Or whether I get seen at all. That's not a fair exchange. That's a managed life. Co-location means they built a mansion next to the well and locked the door. They didn't hack the system. They built next to it and unplugged the rest of us. All of that started local. County boards, tax breaks, rubber stamp approvals. But that was only the beginning. What used to happen one project at a time has now moved up to the federal level. This shift did not come from one party or one president. Both sides watched it unfold and helped push it along. What began with a few quiet zoning deals is now protected under national defense law. These companies get treated like public infrastructure without ever becoming public. They remain private, but get protected like sacred infrastructure. Because in a techno-fascist order, corporate servers are survival. In March 2025, the Trump administration signed an executive order called Deploying Advanced Nuclear Reactor Technologies for National Security. On paper, it looked like a defense investment. In practice, it gave big tech direct access to the Department of Energy's infrastructure and reclassified their server campuses as critical to national defense. That one label changed everything. Their electricity now qualifies for priority under the Defense Production Act and other emergency use laws. If the grid fails or demand spikes, their facilities stay on. Their power gets protected like a military base. You can't see the contracts. You can't question the power draw. Because national security means shut up. The contracts they sign move through federal agencies like the Department of Energy, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and sometimes even the Department of Homeland Security. These deals bypass most public review. People never see the terms. Local officials often have no ability to challenge them. I understand the argument. Artificial intelligence plays a role in national defense. The systems we rely on, satellites, drones, logistics, use this technology. But if that's true, then it should belong to the public. If you want federal protection, then act like a public utility. Open your records, accept oversight. You can't stay private and keep operating behind closed doors while demanding protection written for wartime infrastructure. That setup benefits the companies, not the country. When everything gets called national security, the only thing actually secured is profit. Google saw what was coming and moved fast. They secured future nuclear capacity through a company called Elemental Power before the plants were even built. Microsoft took another route. In 2024, they signed a 20-year, $1.6 billion agreement to restart the 3 Mile Island Unit 1 reactor. Most people remember that place because of the near meltdown back in 1979. It stayed offline for decades. Now it's being brought back for one purpose, to feed Microsoft's private systems. Every megawatt from that plant has already been claimed. The electricity doesn't serve homes. It powers the machines behind the wall. Amazon reached even further. They tried to lock in 960 megawatts from another nuclear plant in Pennsylvania to run a single cloud campus. That draw equals the consumption of a mid-sized city. Regulators reduced the number to 300, but even that smaller deal locked in a pipeline that no other user could access. These contracts do not expire. They often stretch across decades and shield everything inside them. You can already see the pattern playing out in other states. In Oregon's Morrow County, Amazon has surrounded the town of Boardman with data centers. The company signed long-term tax agreements and claimed large amounts of electricity. As those facilities came online, local projects slowed down. Expansion stalled. The people nearby ended up competing for whatever remained. That's how these deals work once they scale. They don't just impact one town, they spread until the system adjusts around them. The energy doesn't come back. In New York's Hudson Valley, a school and housing project sat in limbo because a server facility upstream had already taken the power. The generator for the school never arrived. The home stayed dark. That electricity was never lost. It was already spoken for. And once it moved, the public had no way to pull it back. We didn't lose the grid. We gave it away one contract at a time. When disaster strikes and grids face difficult choices, these facilities remain protected by legal and physical priority. While these systems expand, citizens continue receiving pressure to reduce personal use. People are told to drive less, rely on fans, unplug electronics, and limit consumption. At the same time, one artificial intelligence system can retrain itself overnight using more electricity than entire neighborhoods. This structure functions by design. A two-layered energy system now defines the landscape. The top layer delivers electricity to machine systems. The bottom layer distributes whatever remains to the public. The structure reveals a pattern of selective abundance, and supply appears scarce only because it flows through locked gates. Many Americans still believe that innovation justifies the split. They assume expansion requires exception. That mindset helped enable the shift. Voters approved subsidies, lawmakers offered land, and silence filled the space where resistance once lived. Those decisions became scaffolding. Construction finished. Terms vanished. The process continues, moving towards centralized control. Some call it corporate. Others refer to it as public-private alignment. A group holding power over speech, contracts, and energy operates beyond any definition of business. That model reflects a sovereign force unconstrained by the framework once called constitutional. The Constitution still exists. It just doesn't reach inside a server farm. Anyone contributing to that structure helps entrench its permanence. Earlier movements recognized the danger. The populist right once had the words to challenge this direction. Libertarian voices did too. Both faded, their energy scattered across media cycles, distractions, and leader worship. Patriotism became merchandise. What remains must return to duty. Real patriotism serves children, neighbors, nation, and creator. That service requires effort, not outrage. Those who care about the country cannot withhold their voices while the grid falls into foreign patterns. Welcome to the machine. That phrase offers placement, not despair. You now know the structure. These are the players. These are the terms. The Americans I care about need to see the board. Understanding placement allows you to stop playing a rigged game. You can place your drop of water in the ocean. That remains within reach. For most of us, it will be the only action available. Still, I will place mine. Not for recognition, not for outcome. I do it because I know where I stand. We replace God with Google, so when the lights go out, don't wonder why.